Welcome to Shorty SuperCoach and welcome to the weekend preview. Talk about agony to ecstasy. What a contrast. Last week we sat here and it was painful to look at, it was painful to listen to, it was terrible, it was carnage at the selection table. This week we can just sit back and rejoice in what has been a very, very kind week at the team releases, and it is looking good for us. I mean, if you dodged the bullet last week with the likes of Goldie as captain, Kerridge playing well, Petrarca, McDonald tipping Woody playing well, if you had Matty D as well, he scored a ton. You know, those guys sort of patching up what was otherwise a bad week. Consider yourself lucky and well done, because we can really build now. It's one of those weeks where, combined with the guys we get back in to the couple of upgrades we can make, for example this week, all of a sudden our team from last week to this week looks poles apart. And if you scored 2,100, 200 last week, even better, you're all of a sudden thinking, gee, I could almost push that to 2,400. We're starting to talk serious numbers now. So it is that stage of the year where, you know, we're nearing in that sort of halfway mark as we sort of climb up to there. It is that time where most of our team is starting to look like how we want it to, and if it all clicks together, some real big scores can come our way. So I'll just glance over some of those ins and outs from a SuperCoach perspective. The ins column will start with Daniel Wells returns on the Friday night, which is good news for many. Michael Barlow returns, which a few would have held on to. He's dominated 2 weeks in the waffle, and no surprise there. Ablett and Hall return as well, which is fantastic. And even just a couple of guys that, you know, are our rookie guys, make a little bit of coin, a little bit of backup. You know, the likes of Daniel Rioli returns as well. Sam Collins and Jesse Joyce will play. A couple of defenders there that, you know, aren't relevant right now, but in a couple of weeks they may be. And you heard it first, Tom Cole from the Eagles will debut. I said about 3 or 4 weeks ago, if you're looking for a guy, I don't think there was anyone on the bubble at all in defence whenever I said this. And I said, if you're looking for someone who will debut, I think it's Tom Cole's your man. And there you go. So he's playing this week after just missing out last week. But as the outs, a few of those rookie players also leaving our sides too. Mainly the make up the bulk of this list. Clayton Oliver, Connor Menendew, Elliot Yeo is injured, Darcy McPherson likewise, Dan Curry, won't hurt too many but he is out. Kieran Collins has dropped, and Bailey Williams is on an extended bench. But I watched the full game against the Giants last week and I thought he was pretty impressive, fairly composed, so I'd be shocked if he didn't play. But look, that's really the crux of it, and it's pretty kind. I mean, when you get the likes of Hall, Ablett and Barlow back, and Wells, I mean, that's a lot of sides will have all 4 of those guys. I reckon 80% will have 3 of them, and anyone else who's serious will at least have 2. So, you know, that's crucial to our sides. But the take-home message this week is just keep that rookie ramp rolling. Just keep the upgrade, downgrade, vice versa. Keep it going. Whatever suits your team to do it at this point in time, do it. You know, if a guy's peaked, then, you know, cull him. If, you know, someone's really dropping down that you like in the mould of Parker, Gray, Deledio, Dangerfield's dropping, Montagna, Rance, you know, these guys, then just do it. You know, if you can really make some advancements in your side, then certainly do so. Don't worry about it if you get to that point and you're like, oh, gee, Shorty, I've only got 16 trades left, you know, should I just hold off? Well, not necessarily. I think if the fruit's right for the picking, then just pick it. I think we'll worry about those trades when we start to get below 10 and, you know, it's round 12 or 13 or something. But I think if the time is right and you could do it at the most efficient way price-wise, then absolutely do it, because we can't predict when a next player or premium will fall. We can't predict when our rookie guys will be at the right price to make that sort of transaction. So if it's right to do it, then just definitely do it. Don't worry too much about trades. If you watch my press conferences, I'm certainly not worrying too much at the moment. I think if you can develop a really quality side by round 11 or 12, and by quality of side I mean almost all premiums, you know, I think that's definitely possible, then certainly do so. It's almost a race to see who can fill out that side the quickest as to who can really pump themselves up the rankings really quickly. So that's the take-home message. Of course, you're wondering, hey, Shorty, why aren't you talking about Jacob Hopper? Well, I'll leave the link in the description here. I've already done a video on him. because obviously he's probably the main talking point. A lot of people debating whether he's too expensive. Is he a lock in their side week to week? Is all the hype justified? Is he going to just bulk out huge numbers from week to week? I discuss all those things in the video, which I'll put in the description there. So if that's your main problem for the week, go check that out. Otherwise, I must again stress to just, this is a real start of the year or time of the year where planning is just crucial. And I know not everyone takes their SuperCoach as serious as, say, myself or some other people, but it's good to have an idea of what you're going to do. If you want to do well, don't just go from week to week, We're not like the coaches in the AFL where we're just focusing on the next week. In SuperCoach, you got to have a glance and a foresight to the next month. And I know, you can't always predict and guess everything to the exact point and the exact dollar, but we can have a pretty good gauge. We've got a good sample size at the moment of most players' scores. We can pretty much predict where they'll roughly be. Now, I think that's crucial if you want to be any good at this game and set yourself up. Reason being, it's just very important to know when this guy will be on the bubble, when this guy will be dropping. You've only got 2 trades a week. That wouldn't be a problem if we had unlimited trades. You could do 4 one week, none the next. It's not as easy as that. That's why if you can plan it out, and this is exactly what I talk about efficient trading, plan it out and then you can work it out exactly how you want it to, and you won't be left hanging when, oh geez, I want to downgrade to this guy because he's an absolute bargain and a must have, but Robbie Gray's at 500,000, what do? I don't have the cash, I wish I had another trade. That's where a bit of planning, you go, oh, gee whiz, no worries, in you come, Robbie, downgrade, I'm flying here. So I'll give you a bit of an example, roughly based off my team, roughly based off, whatever you like, I suppose, but it just gives you an idea. I talk a lot about plans. Some of you may go, well, what do you really mean, Shorty? Well, I'll walk you through it just quickly. For example, Parker and Gray, their break-evens this week are about the 120 mark, so I reckon they're at the very least going to sort of plateau, so I'm not going to worry about them, even though they're on my radar at the moment. Brett Deledio, I really like. I've got Tom Papley just sitting in the bench there on the forward line. He's probably peaked as well the fact he's not playing, so see you later, Tom. Brett Deledio, in you come. Again, if you watch my press conference, I've got a bit of money in the bank, so I can afford to do that, about 250,000. So in comes Deledio. I'm looking at, sort of downgrade options, or Darcy Byrne-Jones. I know he's playing, but he's probably peaked. He's done well. I can get 200k there. Bailey Williams, I like the look of him. In you come, mate. Downgrade. Gives me a bit of cash for next week when Robbie Gray and Luke Parker all of a sudden have probably bottomed out. I know the little asterisk there is, but Luke Parker scores 150. Yes, that can happen, but we can only predict, I'll allow for about 130. If he doesn't move, then so be it. But it's good to have a rough plan. So, they're well within range. Matheson's on the target. You downgrade to him, get some nice cash there. All of a sudden, I can, turn Corey Ellis into the midfield, swapping with Carriage or something like that. Bring in Robbie Gray because he's a bit cheaper as well, so I can save a bit of dosh there. Then, the next week, we take a look at how can I get in Luke Parker. Well, Mitch Brown in the back line, he's done well. He's lost that 29. He's had a nice jump up the price chart there. He's probably flailing a bit, but he could make a little bit more. It's hard to say. But hey, Sam Collins is there, Tommy Cole, Jesse Joyce, all getting good opportunities. I can downgrade to them. They're on the bubble, gives me another 200k, and then I can trade in Josh Smith for Luke Parker or something like that. Or something like Jared McVeigh, Alex Rance in the back line. Marcus Adams can be culled for one of them. So that's just an example. Now, it can sound like a lot of mumbo jumbo, and it's a lot easier when I'm familiar with my side and it's right in front of me, sort of thing. But look at your side and look at that, because what you try and do, the basis is get a guy at his cheapest and cut a guy at his dearest. Of course, a rookie at his dearest. Now, that's pretty simple, but it's easier said than done. So that's the basis of it, and hopefully you guys can do that to the best of your ability. Sometimes you can't always do it, but if we can plan ahead and do it as well as we physically can with 2 trades a week, you'll set yourself up nicely. Now, I'll just touch on some vice-captain's options. It's pretty straightforward this week because a Friday night brings about some superstars as Sydney take on North Melbourne. Of course, most people will look at Todd Goldstein, Luke Parker, Dan Hanbury. I got asked during the week, who would I pick of those three? I'd probably lean towards Hanbury. I think he's probably the sort of bloke who, well, they can all go huge, but I just like his point of difference factor. I think Kurt Tippett's going reasonably well enough in the ruck that he'll give Goldie something to think about. I think Goldie could probably score around that 120, 130, 140 mark. He always can. But if I was picking, I would just go Hanbury, just because as a vice-captain, he was in great form last week. He's a superstar, as they all are, but I just think, if he goes big, you can really set yourself apart because he is point of difference, and if he scores 150, there's 300 points you get that potentially no one else does. So, and I think most people will do that and probably go into Dangerfield on the Sunday or Pendlebury on the Sunday. Heath Shaw, a lot of people will be looking at. Yeah, I can't blame you to put the VC on him. Bear in mind, Eddie Betts will probably be the man he takes. He normally does. And that's not to say he won't score well, but it is to say that he probably won't be left alone doing nothing, and he'll be a little bit more accountable with Betts over there in Adelaide. And another one that might be a bit left field, but I like the look of Max Gawn. If you're feeling risky, if you don't have Goldie for whatever reason, or you haven't brought in Parker or Hanbury yet, and you're going, oh, gee, who do I go with? I'm not really sold in anyone at all. I want to go Pendlebury into Dangerfield, but their games are too close, sort of thing. Well, Max Gawn has only travelled outside of Melbourne to play twice this year, and he scored 172 and 174. Is that a coincidence? Probably a little bit. It's got nothing really to do with the ground. Perhaps coincidence, but, if you're into little omens or something like that, he goes over to play Port Adelaide, goes north wherever they're playing there, and he takes on Trengove and Dougal Howard, two, unnamed and unrecognised ruckmen. So I know he's been in poor form, but if he's going to explode, which, Gawn, he does have that roller coaster aspect about him, then this could be one of those weeks he goes 150 plus. So it's worth thinking about, but I'd probably opt for one of those guys on Friday if you can. So that's a bit of a wrap up for the weekend anyways. Hopefully that has helped you guys out a little bit. All the best for the weekend. I hope your trades come to fruition and you start getting those premiums rolling into your side. I'll be back on Monday for the press conference as always. Subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed it. Comments are always welcome. I'll hopefully answer a few questions throughout the afternoon, and I'll chat to you guys soon.